Hi everyone, my name is Ankit Basnet. I'm a graduate student in the Department of English and I work at the Digital Scholarship Center. It's just down the hall. So today Jay and I are going to talk about, give you some basic information and general guidelines about making podcasts, right? Jay will talk about the recording equipment and the editing technology, and I want to talk about the content and the structure of the podcast. I passed around a handout where I've outlined the general principles of organization, things you need to consider when planning your podcast, and also best practices you need to follow during your delivery and presentation, basically. I also looked at the podcast assignment sheet that Dr. Casanova had given you, and it seems to me that the assignment is to tell some sort of narrative about a topic related to sociology of gender, right? And she has listed a few methods that you can use. One of them is interviewing an expert on the discipline to ask her to explain something that is probably problematic or even ask her for possible solution. Another method is to survey a general population of, let's say, student body on campus, right, to assess their opinion on a specific topic. So it seems to me that some of the methods he has outlined, or a lot of methods he has outlined, involves incorporating multiple speakers in the podcast, right, or even using audio clips to present as evidence and analysis. I think that is a very good way to think about approaching this podcast assignment, also thinking about podcasts in general, because most podcasts usually have more than one speaker, or there's always going to be more than one type of voice in the background, right? And I think depending upon how you are going to approach your podcast, the type of materials you're going to collect, it'll kind of determine the shape of your podcast, basically. But one thing I do want to kind of emphasize is, I guess the purpose of this assignment is to kind of tell your audience and listener what people think about a particular topic, right? And if there's a different way to think about a topic. One thing that I definitely want you all to consider throughout your production process is, what is one single point that I want to communicate to my audience through my podcast? I want to begin by talking about the structure of the podcast, and I'm going to begin on the top of the handout. So the general format of the podcast is fairly basic, right? You have an introduction to the podcast and the topic, you give your name, and then you state a topic. There'll be a main body where you'll make your points and present your analysis, and then you have a conclusion. This general format that I have outlined at the top of the handout is, I think, most appropriate when you have a single host or a single speaker who is, let's say, giving a commentary on a cultural object like movie, or a single host who is reporting or assessing the outcome of the survey that you collected, right? But there are definitely three things to consider when organizing your content into a sort of a structured format. First thing is, you need to be concise. State your point directly and in clear fashion. For instance, you can begin your podcast by introducing yourself, include some kind of fade-in jingle, give your name, title the podcast, but then jump directly to the, directly state the topic of the podcast itself, right? And it can be as simple as saying, "Hi, welcome to this podcast on sociology of gender. My name is Ankit, and I'm going to talk about this," right? You have only 5 minutes to present your podcast, so be efficient with the time. When you go to the main body of the podcast, state the point you want to make, present your evidence, do the analysis, transition to the next point you want to make about the topic, and then move on, right? Do not ramble because you only have so much time. Second important thing that I want you all to consider is having transitions and cues in the podcast that will basically let the audience or listeners imagine what is going to follow in the podcast, right? In other words, you should lead your audience into the materials that you're going to present in the podcast. One way to organize those materials and having transitions is to just present them in a linear order, right? When you go to the main body of the podcast and to the topic itself, you can begin by saying, the first point I want to make is, the second thing I want to talk about this topic is this, right? So basically transitioning the readers or the audience, the topic itself. And I'll talk more about this transitioning aspect later. Third thing you want to keep in mind when you're producing your podcast is having a clear and sustained focus on the topic. You should think about giving some context to the audience. State your purpose in recording this podcast. You should also tell the audience why did you collect these specific materials to make your case. How are these materials relevant to your topic, right? For instance, if you are doing a gender critique by commenting on a movie, you want to tell about what it is about the movie that lends itself to this commentary, right? Providing context for the audience so as to help them tie the pieces together. So this is the basic format of the podcast: intro, context, body, and outro. And you can play with this format. You can come up with your own format. And like I mentioned earlier, depending upon what materials you're using, the format is going to be different, right? I think you should let your content determine the shape of the format. For instance, if you're doing a guest interview, begin by giving a brief profile of the guest itself. Give some background information on the guest and tell the audience, give context to the audience as to why you brought this specific person to talk about this specific topic, right? Perhaps the guest is an expert on the field, or perhaps you have brought someone to narrate a personal experience that is relevant to the topic. Again, when you're doing a guest interview, make sure that you're providing context as to why you're bringing this person. And then after providing context, directly move on to the questions, right? I guess one thing to think about is keep the banter to the minimum, because you only have so much time to get the interview done. One thing I definitely want to suggest is that you do some preliminary research on the topic and the questions you're asking, right? For instance, if you're going to ask, and this is a question from the topic list from the assignment sheet. If you're going to ask, why aren't more girls pursuing careers in computing and tech field, try to find some data on this gender difference and cite this data when you're asking the question to the interviewee, right? In other words, try to anchor your questions based on some research information or even based on some shared cultural experience. When you're at the end of the interview, see if you have any follow-up questions that you want to ask. If not, end the interview by saying, the last question I want to ask is, to kind of provide some closure to the interview itself. You can also use similar approach when your podcast is a group discussion. First, introduce the members in the panel and tell your audience or listeners why you have selected this particular group of people to talk about this specific topic. Right? Do these people have anything in common? Did you want to have a diverse group of people so that you can have a range of perspective on the topic? Again, provide some context. After you provide the context, I would suggest that same thing with the general format. Try to divide the topic into different sections. Have an outline for the discussion. And I think having a group discussion as part of the podcast is probably going to be challenging because it's 5 minutes and you have to keep everyone in focus, and it's going to be really difficult to tie in the conversation together and prevent anyone from rambling on with other topic or going off in a tangent, right? So having an outline is going to be very helpful. And one thing I definitely want to suggest when conducting a group discussion is the moderator should ask each question about the topic to only one or two people in the group. And I say this because if you ask the same question to, let's say, 5 people in the group, there's a fair chance that you'll get redundant answers, right? So you may not find anything new or interesting. And given the limited time frame, this also allows everyone in the group to participate in the discussion. Another way to structure a group discussion is to use your team as group members, right? And use a script for the conversation. Finally, conclude the group discussion by summarizing the outcome. Tell the listener, did the group come to an agreement on the topic? Tell the listener, were there significant differences in responses? Basically, what was the outcome of that discussion on the topic, right? So the format is pretty similar even when you are doing field interviews, interviewing a bunch of people, let's say on campus. First, in your podcast, state the topic, give a brief profile of the demographic that you have selected to interview, right? If you're interviewing people on campus, tell the audience if you have selected, let's say, just the undergraduate students, or if you have selected everyone from undergraduates to graduates to professors to campus staff, right? Provide context for the audience. I think for interviews of people on the street, it definitely helps to be conscious about selecting a general body from the entire population. Try to restrict yourself to a specific demographic, I would say. And one thing that would be helpful in analyzing the responses that you receive, the answers that you receive in the interview is, I think, using a compare and contrast method to kind of sort of assess the results of the survey. First, what you want to do is group the response, put the responses you receive into different groups based upon how similar they are, right? After you have grouped the responses into different sections of the topic, you want to tell the audience why did you think a particular demographic or population responded to the question in a similar way, and how was this response, or why was this response different from a different demographic that you interviewed, right? So basically you're assessing the outcome of the survey and summarizing the results for the audience. Next thing I want to talk about is planning your podcast. Things you need to consider before recording. Planning is everything because you have to be efficient with the time. It will help you keep your recording session smooth, and it also make your editing process easier. The first thing to consider is selecting people or speakers you want to have on the podcast, right? First of all, you should select a host or a moderator who can speak confidently, has good pronunciation, and doesn't have an accent. So I guess somebody like me with a thick accent would not make a good host for the podcast. But at any rate, if it's an interview, try to find someone who is an expert on the field or who can at least answer your questions in an intelligent manner, right? If you're interviewing people on the street, make sure that you're selecting people from the demographic that you have restricted yourself to. And I guess you could even ask them to introduce yourself to make sure that you can put them into groups if necessary. The second thing I want to talk about is whether or not you have a script when making your podcast. I guess the general rule of thumb is if you use a podcast with a single host, single speaker, for example, someone who's giving a commentary on a cultural object, or someone who is assessing the results of a survey, I suggest that you use a script. As long as you can sound natural and spontaneous while reading from the script, it'll be easier for the recording session and also for editing. But there are podcasts that you cannot read your scripts from, right? For example, group discussion. In such cases, prepare a list of questions that you wanna ask your group or ask the people you're going to interview. And especially in case of interview, one thing I'll suggest is try to have as many questions as possible and try to come with possible follow-up questions. The follow-up questions can be useful, especially if you're trying to get the guest to talk about a specific topic in detail, right? I would also suggest that you should consider giving the guest your questions beforehand, or at least tell the guest about the topic that you're going to interview that person on. If you're interviewing someone to narrate their personal experience, you should try to get to know that person beforehand so that you know what kind of questions to ask, right? For group discussion, if it's not possible to make a script, at least come with an outline and share the outline with the group before actually recording the session. The next thing I want to talk about is segmenting your recording process. Whenever possible, break your recordings into segments or record in segments, right? I guess when you are doing a group discussion, you're only going to have one segment, I believe. But whenever possible, try to break your recording into segments. Even when you are interviewing your guest, you can think about recording the introduction and the ending as different sections, different segments. It'll allow you to, recording in segments will allow you to basically re-record the same thing and fix the errors. The next thing I want to talk about is background audio, and I think this is the most fascinating thing about making podcasts, right? Because you can get really creative with the type of audio clips or background audio or music that you can use in the podcast. There are two things that I want to mention and that can be useful. First of all, background audio can be helpful as a sort of transition between speakers and sections. For example, if your podcast is a commentary on a survey, you might want to use a background audio between the speaker or the host and the people who are being interviewed. They'll kind of sort of create a transition and make it less disjunctive, right? So background audio, when it appropriately reflects the mood of the content, it can suggest transitions. With background audio, you can also use background audio or audio clips from cultural outlets like movies, especially when you're analyzing them, right? Present them as evidence and analysis. The last thing I want to talk about is delivery, the aesthetic aspect of presentation, basically. Thinking about your delivery or how you sound when recorded is going to be useful for one, it'll help you sound spontaneous and natural. Two, it'll allow you to get your message across smoothly. And three, it'll basically make the listening experience smooth, right? It'll account for a good listening experience, basically. And one thing you need to think about delivery is sentence styles. First thing is, of course, avoid grammatical mistakes, right? And when you're making podcasts, you should be even extra careful with grammar, because once a grammar mistake is noticed by your audience, they tend to get distracted, right? And they might even get hung up on it. So try not to have any grammatical mistakes. Second, use a variety of sentence structures, of course, to avoid sounding monotonous. But what I find interesting about podcasts is there's a lot of ways to play with the sentence structures, right? For instance, you can consider beginning or ending your podcast with questions directly addressed to the audience, right? So that can be one way to play with the sentence structure. I do suggest that you do not use complicated sentence structures because your audience can only grab so much information in one moment, right? So avoid using complicated sentence structure. Otherwise, your listener will have to rewind the tape to just make sure that they understand what you were just saying. Second thing I want to talk about delivery is pauses. User pauses deliberately, and this is especially important if you are reading from the script and you want to sound natural and spontaneous. The appropriate places for pauses are, of course, at the end of the sentences, right? But you should also think about pausing or even creating slight hesitations when you have punctuation in the sentences, right? You should also pause or even have a slightly longer pause when transitioning between different sections within the podcast. Also, pauses in a group discussion can signal that it is the turn of another person to speak, so use pauses deliberately. The last thing I want to talk about is pacing your voice. Speak slower than you do in normal conversation. So this is a 5-minute podcast, and you might be inclined to cram in as much information as possible and try to speak really fast, right? Don't do that, because it's just gonna be tiring for the listener to pay attention to everything that you're saying in a fast pace. Speak slowly, and this is again about making sure that the audience or the listener is understanding whatever you're saying without having to rewind the tape. Speaking at a slow pace also allows you to enunciate properly. It also allows you to maintain a consistent tone throughout the recording. And you should also speak even slower when you're trying to emphasize a point, an interesting fact, or a piece of information, right? So think about sort of the aesthetic aspect of presentation when you are recording the materials, and good podcasts always make it easier for the listener to understand what you're saying, right? So these are basically the guidelines I wanted to share with you. And one thing I would say as I end is there isn't really a rigid structure that you can follow. So these are just basic information that you can play around with and come up with your format. But you definitely want to think about organizing your content into a tight structure. You definitely want to think about being efficient with your time. You definitely want to think about using language economically. But other than that, just have fun making your project, I would say. Any questions?
Not one?
No?
He's a genius then, right?
I should have asked this in the beginning, but I'm going to ask you all this now. Do any of you have experience making podcasts? No? You do?
Zilch.
Okay. Do you want to add anything to what I just said? Okay. Cool.
Yeah. Hooray!
Jay, do you want to add anything to what I just said?
It was excellent.
All right. Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, my name is Jay Senard. This is my department, which is the STRC. I have one handout for you guys and gals. That seems appropriate considering I just found out what the content is. So, this is a handout, everything that we lend out. I'm going to go to the back end there. You can't always that back there. Has anybody borrowed from us before? Really? That hurts my feelings. So I just got to quickly talk about that process. So everything that is on this list is you can borrow from us. In a minute here, I'm going to kind of show you the equipment that you'll get from us and kind of show you how you would set it up for a podcast. And then after that, I'm going to actually show you how to build a podcast inside Audacity, which is an Adobe product inside the Creative Cloud. And the Creative Cloud is almost on every computer on campus. So you can sit down almost at any computer on campus if you have headphones out there, and you'd be good to go. Okay? So to make reservations, how would you make reservations for this equipment? You're going to look on that sheet and you're going to call that desk up front. So the equipment all goes across that desk up front, which is called the desk. That's what they named themselves. I did not approve that message. Never mind. That's a November. Thank you for responding. Too many election stuff. So you just make reservations on there with that phone number, or just head up there and just at will walk up and make reservations up there. Okay? So that's how you're going to get the equipment. So you guys are going to be doing some kind of podcast, and I've brought out what I think you could use from us to do the proper thing. Unfortunately, I'm not going to touch that mic. So can everybody see that mic right there? This is USB-driven microphone, so if you wanted to do it on your computer and capture all your audio through your computer, it's plug and play. You just plug that mic up and it's ready to go. If I mess with it now, it's going to mess up my audio on my capturing everything in the room right now, what I'm going to be doing on the desktop here. We have about 5 of those. It's a $100 microphone. When I talk into that microphone, I am super sexy. I don't know what goes on with that microphone, but it does something to my voice. It might not work for everybody, but this mic's got a great pickup on it. It does a great job picking up. The other thing this mic does, this would probably be a mic if you're going to have a conversation with someone, so you could be on kind of either side of that mic and it's going to do a good job picking it up. Does that make sense to everybody? A lot of our mics are very directional. This one is kind of omnidirectional, where it's going to give you more of a pattern around. Does that make sense to everybody? So if you're definitely going to have more than one person talking, this is probably the mic you're going to borrow. But then you're kind of forced on the computer at that point. Who's beeping?
And what's that mic called?
USB microphone, I think, on that list. So what I'm showing you now is just one of our tripods that we have. And let's say you want to go back to your room or back to a dorm room or somewhere here in the library. This is just going to allow you to hook our microphones up in some kind of manner where it's going to be right there in front of you. So we have this kind of microphone, and I call this one the middle of the road microphone. I think that's what it's called on this, something like middle of the road. This one's about a $200 microphone. We have, and I'll show you in a second, we got a microphone that's $1,600. And then we have, I'm sorry, this is a digital wave recorder. It's not a microphone. I said that wrong. So this is a digital wave recorder. It's going to capture your voice and obviously put everything down onto as the data. And we have 3 types. This is the middle of the road one. We've got one that's $50 one, and I'll show that in a second. And then we got the $1,600 one. So let's say you want to do your podcast, and you are a standing person. So when I do I do a lot of voiceovers here. I don't do obviously podcasts, but when I do voiceovers, I stand up. So you set that up, you hunker in about like that, you get it recording, and that is hunker. Is that a good word? Do you like that word? I just popped into my head. So right here in front of that microphone, that's going to do a really good pickup for that. Just for you guys, I have bought something new into the system, and that is the pea popper. So if you are going to use any of our mics and you're going to, I've never tried to put this on this, so just bear with me here. I'm hoping that this is not going to tip over and I'm going to look like an idiot, which as many times in my life I have. So something like that. So basically you're going to do your voiceover like that. I just bought 5 of these. I'll have it in inventory by the next couple days. So if you're going to do this and stand like this, you need the P popper. No one here is not going to be able to not pop the P's. If you have it not there, it is a sound every time you say a P. It goes no matter what you do. Even if you go real light, it's going to still somehow pop. Thank you for not laughing. I was trying not to be funny. So you would want to borrow something like this if you're going to talk into this microphone, okay? You guys should be excited that I bought something specifically for you guys and added in the inventory. So we've got 5 of these for you. Truly, you need this if you're going to be in close to this microphone. Let's say you're going to borrow this one and you know you're going to get in close and that's the mic you're going to use. You still want a popper in front of it because it's going to pop on that one too. Typically when I use this one, I do what I'm doing now and my mouth isn't close to it. Does that make sense to everybody? But if you're going to do a straight up, have it close to you, you need to have this thing in front of you. Does that make sense to everybody? So that's one setup. We've got maybe 6 of those. These are like a $10 item. The other way you can do it is borrow a mic stand from us, and you just basically set the mic stand up. And it kind of goes like that, and it goes like that. And then you can put this on that, and you're going, Jay, that's not looking like that's going to adapt. It is not going to adapt. It will not adapt. It's simply not set up for that. So we've given you, I forgot those were up there. They was on the screen. I was. So I've given you something like this, and this is kind of like a little bendy guy. You're going to somehow be clever and just get that wrapped around there. Even if you have to go down here, does that make sense? You're just going to get it, or even clip it on there at some point. And then you'll be able to have it on there. So everybody got that clear? This is going to give you the ability to get that mic in close, okay? Because when you get in close with this equipment, your voice is going to sound clearer, crisper, and not sound like you're in a cave, okay? There was one other item that I was going to show you today. It is a portable sound booth, and it's a device that's about that big. It's made of foam. You put your mic in the middle of it. I know I'm like, what the hell, Jay? Just bear with me, okay? Just be visual with me. And you put your mic in the middle, and then it will not let you sound like you're in a cave. So you have to put your popper in front of it. In this room, if I'm talking like this to this mic, everybody can hear that there's quite a delay. Can you hear there's a small delay and kind of bounce around the room a little bit? This would not be a very good room to do your podcast or for me to do voiceovers. I always use the little portable sound booth. It kind of controls my sound so it doesn't go off in another direction. No yawning because that's making it difficult for me too. So you could borrow that too. And I went out actually and bought another one because I was freaked out that both of them were checked out today. It freaked me out. It's like, what the hell? So people were borrowing, so I was happy about it. So there's 3 of those for you guys to borrow. Let's say you are a person who wants to sit down and do things. We've got this guy here, so you could set that down, get down, and then it's closer to your mouth. Does that make sense? And also gives it a place to rest on. So you would never want to set your microphone. Well, that's exciting. You wouldn't want to set it like that. You would want it on this pointing directly at you, okay? We have about 5 of these. This is like a $5 item. I throw prices out there because you guys paid for this stuff, by the way. So it's just something that I kind of do. And I tell you the amount just to give you a concept that, hey, that's how many you guys got. You might want to make reservations as soon as you know you're going to do it because we have a limited amount of stuff. Just throwing that out there. So we've got a bunch of these. This allows you to set it there. Also, you obviously use this to wrap it around that. You guys could use your phone to capture the audio. So this also, you could use this and put your phone on it, so that puts the phone in the angle that you would really want it closer to your mouth. Does that make sense to everybody? So the phone just slides right in there, unless you've got a super bigger phone. My phone will fit in there, but maybe if it's a super big phone, I don't think that's gonna get warm. But that's what we've got for you. So another way to capture the audio is this little digital wave recorder. We have about 30 of these. This is a $50 item. But this one could be very individualized. You just simply put the microphone in place and then clip it on right at your sternum. And then that way you're capturing all your audio that way, okay? This does not make you sound super sexy. This is just an okay pickup on this. Does that make sense, everybody? This is going to be a little bit kind of tinny, but not amazing sound. It's good sound, but not something where it's spectacular. I don't think she's going to care that you're going to sound super sexy and spectacular, so I think you're smiling. These will work. Couple things. If you're going to use this, do not have jewelry on. We're not talking fingers, we're talking around the chest here. Okay? Don't put it down here. It'll give belly sounds. Put it up here. So make sure you have it like right here on the sternum, because the actual volume of it comes off of your sternum here, and the sound's coming out right in that area. Okay? So directly in the middle as much as possible. If you go over here, it's going to lose some of the bass sound, just so you know, because your sternum actually gives you that bass sound. That makes sense, everybody? You could put it there, but directly right. Shit! Sorry. It's still recording now. That computer's supposed to know something's going on. It's recording, it's still not paying attention. So this is another way to actually capture your audio. This is the Marantz 660D, and that's the, I think we called it the, I can't remember what I call it, I should call it the super expensive holy crap, because it's $1,600. This is what they use in the industry. This will give you broadcast quality sound, even if it just as it is here. Just set it in front of you, talk across it, and it's going to give you really good sound. This is more used for CCM students. They'll put it on stage and they'll do some kind of whatever they do over there. It could be singing instrument, a concert, whatever. This does a great job. But you're all walking away with something that's, how much? $1,600. So just realize that you're responsible for that. So go ahead.
And
What's that?
what's it called?
What's it called?
The super expensive.
Super expensive, holy crap. No, so there's the middle of the road one, so on that list, and you'll see digital rave recorder professional, is that what I said? Somebody help me out.
It's a digital Zoom.
The digital Zoom is the middle of the road one, the first one I showed you.
Digital audio.
What did I call it? I didn't call it super holy mount, amazing crap, what?
I mean, it says
Okay.
best next to it.
Okay, the best. This is the best one. I think they made me take away the holy crap. So, 2 of these though. It's just the cost is just too much for us to have more than 2 of those. Okay, so that's what we've got. We have normal stage mics, but that's not really what's set up for podcasting. That's set up to a microphone and an amplified speaker, and you're singing to it, you're talking to it. So we've got that kind of stuff too on that list. That's not going to help you with what you're doing here. So this is our limited resources to help you with your project. Okay, go ahead.
So if like all this stuff that makes you sound super sexy is rented out, is there like a soundproof room that we can rent, or is it just
What a great question.
portable?
It's when you borrow it, you can have it up to 5 days.
The room.
No, we're talking the equipment.
Okay.
You're going to have to find the room. So there's no room on campus.
Like a sound note. There's a
There's
sound.
no soundproof room on campus.
Oh, okay.
So that's why I said you might want to borrow the thing that's not in the room, because it surprises the heck of me that they're both out today, and that's why I bought another one. And that's it's called the portable, I think, sound booth. Isn't that what it's called on there? That makes it sound like you're in a soundproof room. Does that make sense?
And how many of those?
We've got we've got 3 now because I panicked and bought another one. Thinking of you guys. Those are like $500. Isn't that odd? It's a styrofoam. So I want to make sure that you have something like that available. Okay? And I started to sense my voice was going to go. And you're like, that would be great. Okay, how are we going on time? Good. Okay, so you've got your stuff. I'll tell you what. I just now thought your question completely through. We have a production studio in here. It's not completely soundproof, but what I have is soundproof tiles that are portable, so you could surround yourself in that and then use that room. So if you don't want to go to your dorm room or go to your apartment or go to your house or whatever, you're welcome to come and borrow this room. Okay? So that's a great segue to how do you make reservations for the production studio, where you could use that as a sound booth in there. We won't have time today, but if you show up and that's what you want to use, I swear to you, I'll set you up a little soundproof room in the room. And you'll be like, that's really weird, Jay, but that's what it's going to be. You're going to come into this room, and I'm going to show you in a second how to use our software. If you wanted to come in here and use this room because it's kind of cool, it's not needed, though, just to let you know. The software does not need these $10,000 computers. It doesn't need the latest processors. It doesn't need the 57 gigs of RAM that we're running off of them. It doesn't need it. This stuff out here will work just fine. But you're welcome to do audio editing in here. We let you do audio editing and video editing in here, but nothing else. Okay? So you want to make a reservation on this suite. Our number, the STRC, is on there. So you're calling that desk and you're making a reservation. We're going to give you 4 hours per day, though. Got that, everybody? So we're not going to let you reserve one of these computers and then the production room for 4 hours. That's probably more than enough because you have a life and you have other classes and you've got other things going on. Does that make sense? Okay, so I'm going to turn my back on you guys. I apologize for that. But I obviously have to be looking at the computer now. So just bear with me. I can kind of see you in a reflection there, so no throwing things, no faces, whatever. Okay, you're a tough audience today. I'm trying my best. So, you've captured your stuff. It's on some kind of SD card. The little guys have the little mini guys, and they're like wee big, so be very careful with those. Don't lose those, because they're kind of expensive. So you're going to come in here. You're going to take the SD cards and you're going to plug it up, and we're going to drop the stuff down. I'm just going to pretend that. But we're going to drop it down on to the hard drive. So in this room, when you log on, only you can touch the stuff. No one else can. Does that make sense, everybody? I'm sure it's that way out there, but I'm just making it very clear that we've got it set up. It's not quite the same security out there because we have to have it opened up a little bit so the power is available for you, but no one else can get to your stuff. Does that make sense, everybody? So your stuff is safe and no one else is going to come along and steal your ideas, is what I'm trying to say. You're like, why would they do that? But people do that, just let you know. So you drop your data down on here, and at that point, you're going to open up the app that you need. And shit, where's it at? What the freak? This has been one of those, what the heck? I clicked on an invisible one and it's not the one I wanted. So, of course it's going to act weird on me. So now I got to just let that one kind of ride its way out. Sorry about that. It is a Windows environment, so you're going to have to live with the Windows environment, things that go wrong. We had that conversation, didn't we?
We did.
Yes, we did. And there it was. Hello.
There it is.
Hello, Mr. Windows. And of course, After Effects is one of the biggest freaking things that takes forever. Go away. why is that happening? Oh, I just love when things like that happen. So I'm gonna go into the back door. I already have an icon sitting here ready to go. Call it maybe. I don't know what I was thinking. So I put maybe just in case I need it. You think that's funny? Maybe just in case I need it? Okay, thank you, because I now need it. So I'm going to open maybe here. But maybe it's going to go right to what you don't want to see. I want to start you from scratch. So we're going to just start a new multi-track session. Actually, I want to start a brand new everything. So when things go wrong, it does go wrong, just so you know. Okay, yeah, that's how it is. What the hell? Okay, so when you open up this software, it's not going to look anything like that. It's just going to be blank. So the first thing you're going to do is, you see where it says files here? You're going to right click and you're going to say import, and you're going to bring in the data that you have, okay? And you just click on the stuff, no yawning, you're making my life hard. So you bring the stuff in, and then when you click on it, you can go ahead and play. So I brought in, and we talked about it, I brought in some music to do transitions, or maybe an opening music for your blog, whatever you want. So this is all sitting here now. Let's pretend there's nothing there. What you would do is you would go click on one of the items and then go multi-track. If you're not clicked on one of the items, multi-track will not open up. I'm sorry that I didn't go from a blank one. It would take me too long to find where that icon went. But trust me, if there's nothing in here, you drop your stuff down, multi-track will not be operational until you click on one of the sounds. Does that make sense? Or one of the audios that are sitting there. So at that point, you can take your stuff and drop it in. So let's say we want some kind of opening music for your blog. So I basically left click and I dropped it down, and it's going to go like any Adobe product. It's going to go left to right on a timeline. Has anybody used any of the Adobe products before? Okay, so left to right, it's just a simple left to right system. So now that it's down on the timeline, I can kind of take control of it. So if this is the beginning of your blog, and then it gets through it, and then I have an audio here. Just bear with me here. And I'm going to drop down my audio. My audio is a voiceover for a video that I've done recently, and so it's really long. So I want to zoom the timeline. Does everybody see where my pointer is right now? So I want to kind of zoom in a little bit, and then you can zoom out. Does that make sense, everybody? So it allows you to see what's going on. So I know that I don't want the very beginning here. I want my audio to start right here. You're just going to have to trust me on that. So you're going to take your razor blade, see it right there, I'm clicking at the top, and then I'm going to click the razor blade in around that area. And it's made a cut. Set the razor blade down because you don't want to cut yourself accidentally. Thank you for laughing. That's my only Premiere joke and editing joke that I can actually get a smile out of. So I'm going to delete that out. And now I'm going to hit play, and we're going to have the opening music, which is really weird, by the way. I wouldn't recommend weird stuff.
When you enter Langston Library, inform the front desk
That doesn't make
you
sense.
have
Like,
Langston
that's my voice
462
and my
reserved,
super sexy voice,
or
by the
you are
way.
teaching a class in 462, and a library staff member.
But it's simply raw for me. So I would have to kind of adjust it because the pacing's off. Go ahead.
So if you had that clip in the beginning, like you did before you cut it, will it play while the
It
music's
would
playing?
it would have played, yeah,
Okay.
because it's actually active at the point. So you have to take anything out that you don't want. Does that make sense? So he was talking about transitional stuff, right? So let's pretend that I'm talking about something that makes sense to what we're doing, but I'm not. So just bear with me. So
With the key will walk down to the room with you.
So at that point, I'm basically saying there's a transition, which I kind of did. I said we're walking down somewhere. So I want to, I've got twisted minds there. So I'm going to take this other audio and I'm going to put it up there. No yawning. And, I'm sorry, that's just something about yawning and me falling asleep. So I'm going to make a cut real quick. I'm going to set my knife down, and I'm going to delete that part. So what I'm basically trying to do is make like a segue right there. So I'm going to hit play here.
Walk down to the room with you. They should unlock the window.
And that's not how to do it. But that's an example. I'm looking at it clearly. I think we'll use this, the twisted thing again, and then let's use like this part right here. So we're going to set it down. We're going to take the razor blade and we're going to make the cut. I'm going to left click. I'm going to say delete. And then now that's probably the proper size to fit inside that little gap there. And let's see if that works.
Room with you. They should unlock the what?
See how it made like a thank you for smiling on that. So there's some kind of transition between, and this is what he was talking about before. So if you're setting some kind of transition, you want to audibly tell your audience, say we're switching to something else. You're obviously saying it physically, but you want to follow through with some kind of sound effect or some kind of audio to say, hey, it is transitioning to something else. Go ahead.
Can you like make it so that the transition audio music gets quieter as like it approaches
Yes.
the part when you start?
So just to make the audio do fading is what he's basically saying. So let's say this is a little bit too long and we need it to kind of fade out as it's going down. And I just had a gigantic brain fart. And I'm trying to remember how to drop that effect. Bear with me. I will mention this is the first time I've ever done this kind of class. So I've only had a short time to prepare. I'm not trying to make excuses. Yeah, I'm trying to make excuses. I'm sorry. Thank you for that. There is ways to do it. So when you come in, I'll be able to figure it out quickly. Right now I'm just not grasping my mind. It's simply just drop something down and it just fades in and out. Does that make sense? Really simple stuff. Right now I can't remember where that sits to make that transition. So I'm going to go on until I'll sit there forever staring where that's at. But that's a great question. Thank you for that. You guys aren't going to do something that's going to be presented to Hollywood. Just, let me change that. You're more than likely not going to present this to Hollywood.
I didn't like that.
I'm trying to get famous off the one
Yeah,
podcast.
seriously.
We've already talked about it.
Okay. I'll tell you what I did. When this was brought to my attention, I attempted to make a podcast of my own just to see if I could do it, and I failed miserably. I'll be honest with you. I thought, I'll make a podcast about my life. And you're going, what the hell? If you've ever heard my life stories, I've been around murders, I've been shot at, I've been and I'm not in the military. I'm not a police officer or anything like that. I had all kinds of crazy things in my life. I have crazy stories. So I started to try to put these two stories together, and I can't do it. I couldn't do it. I couldn't I couldn't maintain the same energy that if I stand up and tell you a story right now. I am a person that can tell a story in front of you. When I tried to go to the podcast version of this, I can't project my energy, my excitement, my ability to keep focused because I need his eyes, I need her eyes to keep focused on what I'm talking about. Does that make sense? So podcasts are not that easy, I don't think. 5 minutes, yeah, I was shooting for my life. So I found miserably at presenting my life to you. You're going, I wouldn't want to say that anyway. So I did try to do the exact thing guys are doing. I also tried to do a 5-minute version. And I came with the 5-minute version and I yawned. So it was in my own life. So 5 minutes is difficult to present something of the scale of my life. Just throwing that out there for you guys. How did I get off on that? Oh, because he wants to go to Hollywood. And that's great if you go to Hollywood with this or become famous. UC would love to have a royalty on that, by the way. Just throwing that out there. Anything that you use here at UC, I believe, don't they have some kind of touch on that? So if you came up with a great idea, they're not going to take that from you? You don't know? Sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
No, I just won't have any great ideas.
So I've had a couple students who had great ideas, and then and UC takes their cut, by the way. Just throwing that out there. Just let you know. Okay, let's say your podcast is now done. I gotta do one other thing here. So let's get rid of the ending stuff here. How are we doing on time? We're doing great, right?
2 minutes.
I thought the ended at quarter after.
Mm-hmm.
Who lied to me?
Not a liar.
So anyway, you're simply gonna click on the items that you would want. So Control, and then you would go File, Export. I don't know why my hand won't stay straight today. Multi-track, and then you can say Selected Clips. And if you know the entire section is it, and there's nothing else hidden in the background, you can say that too. And then you say Selected Clip, and then you just browse out to where you want it to drop to, and you hit OK. And of course, I've got something there already because I was doing something. We'll call it. And then, boom, it's done. It's sitting there waiting for you. What did I just call it? Everybody, I called it something next D, didn't I? Did I mention Windows? Windows always acts weird. Trust me, it's sitting there. Did I drop it in Windows? Did I drop it in videos? That. No. It's probably that. This is one from earlier, so let's pretend I just did all that. So that's what we just rendered out as
Enter
a,
Langston Library. Inform the front desk that you have Langston 462 reserved, or you are teaching a class in 462. And a library staff member.
so it's just out as a WAV file. And at that point, you can put it up to a website. And just quickly, I was using Buzzsprout. It's free for 3 months. So you can actually set up a whole website named on whatever you want it, and then turn it in that way as this project, and then they can grade it off that. So if you want to become famous, you could use that too. Go ahead.
So does it say, so when we save it, will it save it as like an MP3 and then we can open it?
It's an MP3 or a WAV.
Okay.
Yeah, it's something that you'll be able to put up on,
Like our laptops.
yeah, whatever. But I'm just showing you, if you want to go the full spectrum and actually show, an audio site that actually does it, that's what they have. I'm just showing that Buzzsprout. Any questions? Who said 10 after? Was that, why is,
It is 10 after.
no, it's not, it's one after.
Right.
No, like our class is over 10 after.
Oh.
No, it's just
Yeah.
it's fun.
So you're just trying to leave early.
Nah, Spencer's always long.
What time does class end?
It's
12:20.
Okay. Okay.
It's fun.
So is there any,
If you want to listen to it.
Oh, so,
You can hear if you want to go, but the class isn't over yet.
yeah. So is there any questions about that? Go ahead.
Is there a place we should look to find like background audio that you like would suggest, or are we just supposed to like?
So I think right now, the best place to go is YouTube,
Okay.
and I'll help you extract that. It's a simple website that you just attach the ULR to, and it downloads it to the computer,
Okay.
and then you just drag the audio off of it. It's a simple process.
Is that
It's-
legal?
It's legal for you guys because you guys are covered under fair use laws. So that covers the university, that covers me because I'm going to show you, and that covers you. So when you put it up on somewhere, you're basically saying, with exception of these two gentlemen here, you're basically saying I'm doing this for educational purposes. But if they're doing it for profit purposes, then they're on the hook if they're taking somebody else's material. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So for you guys, if you're gonna, it's totally class related, you could use other things. You just can't use like a whole, I was gonna say Metallica, you guys put in my name wasn't Metallica. But Metallica's the one people who started all this. They didn't want you to ever use any of their shit. So they said, cease and desist. Don't use any of our stuff, but too bad they lost. Ultimately, fair use is gonna win out on that every time. And then our lawyers here, just to let you know, will not back you. They're a bunch of chicken shits. Because I've had to go to task myself, and I've had to sign off on legal agreements where I put things up, and the lawyers are like, "You're on your own, sir." But I'll back you as far as I can, to the point where I think I'm going to be arrested, and then I'll kind of bail on that. And Beyonce's group is the one I fought the most with. They were angry at me for using a piece of the song for some young lady over here wanted to use just 10 seconds of the song, and they wanted me to cease and desist, and I went on a legal battle with them. It took us 4 months to win the battle, but we won. Hooray!
Are you kidding or are you serious?
No, I'm serious.
You're dead
We
serious.
beat Beyonce's lawyers. Me. I'm proud. Can you see the proudness on my face right now? It's just for emails. Go ahead.
So if we want specifically your help with any of this, do you have to like make an appointment with you, or do you
What a
just
great
come
question.
in and see if
Excellent
you're-
question. Yeah, it's best to, and I think my phone number's on there, isn't it? So just call me and I'll make the reservation for one of these machines, and then I'll put on my calendar that you're coming to see me. That way I don't go off and do something else and you're like, where's he at? And my students go, I don't know. So that's a great question. And let me just bear with me. And I'm gonna get very serious here for a moment. And I get very emotional about this. And I'm gonna probably get super emotional because I'm in the freaking hospital 3 days last week. I have pneumonia. It's not contagious, since you're in the front row. The only reason I'm here is because you are students here. If you walk in this room, I'm gonna give you 110% of my effort, and I'm going to take everything you do very serious, and I am going to gut you back. And I just explained, I went to task with Beyonce's lawyers, and they were threatening to take me to court and sue me for money. And we're talking me, not University of Cincinnati. So I will go to bat for you guys. I put my heart and soul in this room, and you guys weren't here, but we had a long conversation that I love what I do here, and I enjoy it, and I have a lot of fun. So when you come in here, it's a big part of what I do. It's the best part of what I do, because I'm working for you at that point. Does that make sense? We don't know what you bring in here. That's not my business, so whatever you're gonna bring in, I don't care. Technically, I'm gonna help you. Emotionally, I'm gonna help you because I'm gonna talk you through it. But I'm not gonna mess with your content. I'm not a content person. This professor does not want me to help with your content. Does that make sense? I am the technical person. I'll be there to make sure technically everything goes okay. But what's going to happen, and I take this very serious, and I'm very serious about this, we're going to sit down and we're going to spend a couple hours together. I'm going to get to know you. You're going to know me. You're going to see me out there, we're going to have a conversation, we're going to talk, and we're going to have a friendship. I have probably 20,000 friendships over the 23 years I'm here. I don't remember everybody's name, I apologize for that. but I take it very serious. This is a great part of the job. So, can you see the emotions on my face? This is not acting. This is me being emotional right now. This is a great part of the job. If it's anything equipment, I've got you covered. Did I mention that I panicked and bought other equipment because I was concerned about you guys? That's breaking all the rules here, and I will get my ass kicked. They don't like when I do that, but this is how I always handle something like this. I'll say, students needed it, back off. And then my bosses back off. I'm not quite like that to my bosses. But I will be in front of a group of people if they start pushing on. I'm saying, the only reason we're here, everybody, is because the students need this. So I'll break the rules a little bit for you too, just like you know. And I did, buying that equipment because I sensed that you guys were going to need it. I normally have to get permission and talk to people and when we're bringing new stuff, but too bad. You guys are going to need it, so we did it. You didn't think you were going to get a big, giant discussion out of that question, did you? But thank you for that. It reminded me that I needed to go there. Any other questions? I do a song and dance now. Y'all ready for that?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, I'm just kidding. Okay, well, I guess we're done then. I appreciate you guys coming to see us.
Thank you.